Dimp Digital presents Idle Game Chat.
Cool.
Persona 3 Reload, Episode Aigis, The Answer, DLC. After unravelling the mysteries of the Dark Hour, spoilers, fighting epic battles through Tartarus, and all the unforgettable events of Persona 3 Reload, the S.E.E.S members find themselves trapped in a never-ending story in March 31st. Journey through the abyss of time as Aigis to undertake new challenges, uncover the cause of this strange fate and the truth about what really happened on that day. Delve into this final chapter now with cutting-edge graphics, modern quality of life features, fresh animations and UI, and rearranged soundtrack. This can only be obtained by purchasing Persona 3 Reload Expansion Pass, so you need that to be getting it. It's not being sold separately, it seems. At least on the PlayStation Store. I played it on Xbox, but you can't even find it if you search for it in Google and put Xbox. I don't know what their website's doing. They don't want you to find stuff, I don't think. But yeah, this is the DLC for Persona 3, which I know you're thrilled to talk about. More of an epilogue, I'd say. But
I was going to say, who's asking for more after that absolute... It's like with that Valhalla Assassin's Creed jobby, when they're giving you more and you're going, well, does it need it? Do you want it? And I guess that's what we'll get into. And for some reason, I'm fully expecting it that everyone does want it and does need it and absolutely will take it. But I always find it bizarre with long games that you still find yourself with DLC. Like,
how's there still more to tell?
Yeah, and if it was that important, why is it... I always find with long games that it should either be it's either an irrelevance, like it didn't need to be told, or I kind of feel like, well, why didn't you just wrap this up in a number 2? Like, I always find it just a bit of a strange thing. Like, if it's shorter games where it's kind of got a short, punchy story, I can get why there might be extra bits that you would want to do because you ain't burnt out by it already. But yeah, I don't know. It just sometimes makes me wonder whether it's just greed or what is it? Why are we doing it?
I think that, again, I think I went through the story last time we spoke about Persona 3, where there's about 12 versions of it. There's like a Portal version, the original version, a S.E.E.S version. But originally it didn't have this. This was something they added, I think, as part of the S.E.E.S version. I can't remember what that even means now. People can go back and listen to that. But it was, at the time, quite controversial because the original didn't have it. So this sort of came out and was like, oh, we're adding more. And they're like, well, hang on a minute. We've been sitting here for years on the understanding that the game ended when you finished the main game. Now you're adding this tut in. So I think it stirred up because the main game, this is completely unnecessary if you think about it from 30,000 feet. Like, you can get into the weeds, and yes, there's things you learn and whatnot, and you know, as to whether people agree or disagree, there is stuff that you find out that you wouldn't have found out, but you finish that game and you're like, excellent, it's done. So it's a bit odd to be going back in and meddling. And
fundamentally, I have a position on DLC for single player games is that it should be banned. Like,
I'm getting sick of it.
I don't like it. I want to get a game, complete it, and be done until the next one comes along. I don't like this because DLC kind of used to be a thing, add-ons for kind of like online games is where I kind of saw it, and like Call of Duty with map packs and things like that, where it's kind of like, okay, something you're playing all the time, something new to freshen the experience. I was like, this is okay. It was relatively unintrusive. It was a few quid, like under a tenner, and you could do it. And now we've got like 15 to 20 hour DLC experiences come along, which is longer than some single player solo experience games. And I'm like, why Why?
Yeah.
I just don't. Look, there's this age-old argument, which is if you don't want it, you don't have to buy it. You don't have to do it, right? But because you're chucking it out there, you're making me think. Well, do I need to do it? Do I want to do I need to do it? What about if I
Yeah.
play the next one? Have I missed out like the 0.5 in the middle that kind of joins it all together? And I just don't like it. I like the idea of buying a game, completing it, trading it without the fear that I'm gonna have to buy the bloody game again to be able to play the DLC.
Yeah, back in the old days where I used to buy a lot of physical and trade, and this was a common problem because they were always adding episodes and expansions and whatnot. And I'm getting sick of it because I think the margins for getting it right are actually quite small.
Yeah.
Like you can get it wrong very easily. You've only got to make it disinteresting slightly or seem unnecessary, and you're like, well, what are we doing here? And this is no small episode. This is I think it's took me 25 hours, and I could have spent longer in there. Probably should have spent longer in there, but at some point you have to call it a day. Yeah, I was looking back at some of the other DLCs I've played in the last year. So I've done Shadow of Rose for Resident Evil Village. Little Nightmares, I don't know if you remember that, complete edition, was on course to earn itself a nice place in the gallery. But because of the DLC tacked onto the end, I got sick of it and threw it away. Shadow of Rose got itself a silver. Little Nightmares ended up with a self-storage tag that didn't get in the gallery. Burning Shores of Horizon Forbidden West, a bronze. Final Transmission, Callisto Protocol, bronze. So they're not setting the world on fire with these DLCs. Now, where that has been challenged in recent years, you look at Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, which is almost like a game, another like a mini sequel to that original game. Adcock liked that. And one of the better ones I've played is the Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty.
Yeah.
But that's different in that I played it post it being available, and it's woven into the main game naturally. Whereas this episode, Aigis, the answer as they call it, is a separate episode complete at the end. In fact, if you've bought the game now and got this DLC pack, you could just skip straight to episode Aigis if you wanted. It's a separate menu, loaded, it brings up a new load screen. So it's 100% separate. And yeah, we'll talk about it some more. But the DLC side of things do annoy me. But then I get things like Alan Wake 2, which has got 2 DLCs either out. I don't know if the second one's out yet, but the first one's out. And I'm like, yep, ready to go back into that. So criticism, but hypocrisy being wheeled out immediately. Just depends how they do it. I don't want...
It also depends when you play it, because I think if you play something on release and then you complete it and you go, right, I enjoyed that, by the time the DLC rolls around, you probably are ready for a little bit more. Or you might think, okay, I'm ready to go back. But I still fundamentally, unless there's a good reason, don't like that. Like, I didn't like it with God of War when they did that. I was like, I don't know why you want me to go back to this. Like, I was like, I just want to be able to one and done it. Like, great experience, great game. And it feels weird to say that, but that's kind of just what I want from single player games. I don't want them to do anything else for me. I don't want them to be sitting around collecting dust because in 18 months' time they might be able to, or they might want to resurrect it from the fucking death that it had. Like, I just don't like it really on the whole. Sometimes if it's done well, it can really extend or add to the experience, but it's everything as well as part of the problem. Like, I'm just drowning in additions and stuff. Like, I didn't want to get rid of Hogwarts for a while because I was like, 100% they're going to fucking chuck some toot out for it. And it just didn't need it really. So yeah, anyway, we digress.
I forgot to mention about that Warlords of New York expansion from fucking Division 2. That was a shower of shit as well that we paid for.
I've been reading a lot about this whole Ubisoft Tencent, whatever it is, thing that's going on. And someone said that basically Ubisoft are good at generally making games, shit at supporting and maintaining them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was cited about that was the Division 2 and the way that they managed that live service kind of game and aspect to it. And I was thinking, yes, it was fucking shit. Because if you go back to it, and start it from scratch now is just a nightmare trying to get yourself through it.
Impossible.
So yeah, there you go. But here we are. So playing this DLC, somehow not burnt out by Persona yet,
Well, you say
despite
it's not burnt out, but I think I definitely was playing through this again.
you're pretty good though. Not burning yourself out on stuff. Like you consciously, I
Well,
would
Metaphor's
say.
out now. Another one, another 100 hour
Well,
being jumped into. So
I think you've. This is a rare misstep from you where
no,
you've.
it's had to be done to get up straight with it. Now it doesn't matter. Now we're here and the here and now that Metaphor's out as their day one playing it. It's that'll be done at some point, probably early next year, but judging the speed I go. But I'm then up straight with their releases, so I haven't got to fucking climb my way out of the pits and try and catch up. So it should in theory pay dividends, but I don't know if it will.
Was that the idea? You were like, right, I need to get up to date with all this stuff before I jump into it. Was that
Yeah, definitely this DLC.
No. I mean, with like Metaphor.
Well, I didn't know when Metaphor was going to be released a year and a half ago when I started this, but when that appeared, I was like, well, that's a good target. Okay. I knew that Persona 3 was coming out this year, the reload, so that's got to be done first. But yeah, I think now that I'm here, it's fine. But it was tough going to this expansion pass because. Or this episode, whatever they want to fucking call it. Like I said, the trouble is you have to buy this bloody expansion pass and it's like 30 quid. Now, I didn't do that because one of the very few things that Game Pass has done well this time is that this is included in that. They very rarely do that. Normally you have to buy the DLC and then you don't own the game and you're like, well, hang on. It's stupid rental bollocks that Microsoft have poisoned the well with. Means you end up buying stuff for games that you don't own. So should you ever choose to walk away, you've rendered that purchase completely irrelevant. So
there is an argument though that you saved yourself the purchase of an original game. So should still.
But this is rare.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I get that, but no, it's a rental service.
It is. With no control about going back and getting it if you did want to get it, and they've decided to take it out of circulation.
Yeah, that as well. Yes, that's true because it'll probably go next year. It'll be on for a year and it'll be gone. And then it's like, and that happens. Yeah, I mean, look, Game Pass is a great idea until the minute that it's not. Because as soon as you decide it's not, everything you've invested in the last however many years it goes. So it then becomes a no idea. You sat there capping nothing. Again, you've probably saved a lot of money over that time, but should you ever want to go back to any of those games, it annoys me. That's why it's all coming to an end next year. These subscriptions all expire and it's just going to be left to rot. I ain't getting involved with them anymore. I'll fucking buy it if I want it.
I think there's definitely an argument that that's a good approach to take because it used to be, and we've discussed it on the pod many times over the past few years, it was a no-brainer in a lot of ways, like in terms of value. But the way that they've changed the pass and the price it's now at makes it far less of a banker, I think. And I, for one, and the problem is there's not a lot of good stuff coming onto it. I think that is... I used to be able to go through it almost semi-regularly and pick something out that I wanted to play, like palette cleansers and various different things. And I don't know whether it's me that's changed or whether there's just not as many interesting things for me. But I've only compared to what I used to play. I've played maybe 3, 4, 5 games on it, maybe this year.
I mean, I started playing Persona 3 Reload for about 3.5, 4 months, just playing that on it. Which, by the time you tot up the subscription fee, could have bought it for that.
Yeah.
I didn't play anything else. But again, it's my fault. How dare I play games sequentially and only do one or two at a time instead of just fucking going, Rah! I'll just start 18 games and see what happens.
Well, it is what it is. I mean,
it's fucking shit.
I just think basically...
Fucking buffet. Get it out. Give me a steak. Cold pizza buffet.
I need to go back to buying stuff, I think, because your point, it seems like a good idea. But say I decide to start playing Call of Duty again, right? And I go, oh, I can just play that on Game Pass.
Yeah, you're
time
in.
round, right? What for PC Game Pass? It's probably like 14 quid a month or something now.
It's
I actually
actually
don't know
cheaper
what
on
it is.
PC.
No, but so this
They've
is where it
got.
gets complicated.
Well, go on. I'll correct it.
So no, so I don't know what membership I've got because there's some games. If I want to play them on the Xbox, I can't if I've only got PC Game Pass. So I have to get the full suite, which then gives me PC Game Pass with it to be able to play it on all things, which I think is about 14, 15 pound a month. Right?
Yeah.
So
required.
it's absolute rip-off merchant territory. So when you break that down and go, if I bought a year of that, so that's £15 a month, 150, £180 a year, right? And if I bought one game and played it for a year, which is basically what I do, because all the other stuff I probably only really play because it's there. I'm not playing it because I actively have pinpointed it. Like, that's 2 AAAs. And I'd need to play 3 AAAs really to be guaranteed quids in.
Yep.
And I just don't think it's offering that. So I think I'm going to move to a model where I stop that and basically just buy it as what you said. If I want a game, I'll buy it. And then it's done.
The way they get you, though, is when they start saying, well, okay, that's fine. You want to stop it. But don't forget, if you want to play online, you've got to have some sort of subscription. And the cheapest one we offer is £9. So for an extra £6, you might as well have the full lot. That's how they're getting you.
Yeah, it's
because money's got to
they
go
do
out
have
the
you
door
by the
regardless.
testicles.
Yeah.
The only good thing is for free to play games you don't. But if
That's
it's
true. Yeah.
something like Call of Duty, if I wanted to buy it, you're right, I'd still have to have it. But then again, do I start thinking about I'll be having that on PC then?
Yeah.
So this is where you have to be tactical about things and actually look at it, because it's easy. It was easy to let that go out the door at £7 or £8 a month. No bother, get everything, play it when you want. But when it's double the price, it makes you wonder. So
what happened there?
we're talking about this DLC thing.
Yeah.
We're back again with Persona DLC this time. You've normally got a list, so we used to have some sort of structure. But I think if you've got the list that you want to work through,
I've got no topics. I've just got comments.
Right. So are they grouped up in any like negative and positive?
I can't even remember now. We'll see.
Observations.
They are.
Right. Let's start. What did you like about it then? Let's do. What did you like? What didn't you like? We're going in that.
What did I like?
Yes.
Very little. Very, very little.
More of the same, mate. More
It's
of the
not,
same.
though.
You loved it.
So it's not more of the same. It's the base game is about, and I don't know if this is exactly right, but let's just for argument's sake say it's 50% dungeon crawling, combat, fighting, turn-based, and then the other 50% is like life sim, deciding what to do with your time, building friendships, all that shit, doing activities, etc., etc. That might not be the exact split, but you can argue there's 2 core elements of the game. That's what they offer. The DLC is basically 95% dungeon crawling. So at those 25 hours, 20 or more were just dungeon crawling. And the rest, there was no social links. There's no social links at all. So there's nothing to build towards. There's no relationships to build. The closest thing you get is that you pick up objects during your travels in the dungeons that you can then present to people when you get back to your dorm. And there's a little tiny story moment there for about half a minute. And half of those aren't voice-overed either, so it feels empty. Whereas the social links are all voice-overed in the main game. So it ain't more of the same. It's more of one particular part of it. And if you remember, we talked about Tartarus being just this bother, basically, to go through this boring area which dragged it down. This abyss of time, whatever it's called, just as bad, if not worse in some cases. No interest in enemies, really. They're sort of reskins of what you've already faced. Characters are the same, but you'll find out a little bit more. The story elements, whilst I think there's something there, one is unnecessary, like I mentioned earlier. This wasn't needed. There's about 1% that it'll add to a 100-hour story, and for 25 hours investment, this ain't it. So you got that problem. And then it's just, let's go through these dungeons, let's get to the end, let's kill a boss, rinse and repeat. And we've got to do this 7, 8, 9 times until we can start to get towards the back end. And it was just tiresome. It busts you down to level 25 as well, under the law reason of, we're a bit rusty because we haven't had a fight in a while. And I'm like, what are we doing? What's all this about? So that was annoying.
That hard work going to waste, basically.
Well, yeah, you do. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that made it a little bit more engaging. I was like, I've actually got to try and think, because everyone's got to build up their powers again. But yeah, it's just not very good. There's repeated environments. Aigis as a character is okay. She's got some unique abilities that you can use in the dungeon. So rather than running around with a sword and hitting the shadows to get an advantage, you can shoot them with a gun, but that's a little bit sticky and hit and miss. So a couple of times I shot at someone clearly in range, but because they were around a corner and there was an invisible bit of geometry, which was a wall which you can't see, it fucking didn't hit it, and then I got blasted and got put on the back foot. So I weren't happy about that. And all in all, it is just a pointless endeavour, this entire thing. Like, honestly, I think you could just do the story, like cutscenes and conversations in. If it goes over an hour, I think that's being generous. And the rest is roaring around these repeated dungeon layouts and labyrinths. And if you love the combat and that's all you play it for, fine. But this is a Persona DLC that doesn't have one of the core elements of Persona in it. It's just an epilogue for the sake of an epilogue with some revelations that people will find interesting, but I could have died quite happily not knowing any of it, and I don't think it would matter. I could quite happily erase what happened in this DLC because it wasn't necessary. It's nice, but you could have just done a fucking anime 20-minute episode and I'd have been, okay, that's better. Sick of it.
So why do you think that they've done that? And why do you think that
brain dead?
Right. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, are you like one of the
They've
odd
inherited
ones out?
this is the thing, they've inherited this because it's a remake and this already existed. They obviously felt compelled that this should be included, even though it's not included in the original. I don't think it's included in Portable either.
What do you mean it's in? I don't understand. I've probably lost that part.
There's 3 versions of the game.
Yeah.
OG.
Yeah.
Didn't have
from
it.
years ago, right?
Yep. Then this S.E.E.S version comes out, which is an enhanced version. They add a new protagonist that you can play as like a female version, and they add this DLC, which at the time people were like, huh? Because they've already played the original and the story's finished and it's years later. Then the portable version, which was made for like Vita and stuff, doesn't have it. So the answer, or whatever this fucking DLC is called, isn't there as far as I understand. So they cut it again, and then for Reload, they're like, let's bring it back for 30 odd quid, which is absurd. Like, I don't get on the price usually, and I didn't pay for this because it was part of the Game Pass thing. But the poor sods that went out and bought this, expecting
£1 an hour.
Well, they bundle it in with all the other shit, like the music from the old games that you can, outfits and stuff, and it's this should have been sold separately for no more than £10 UK, but you don't get stuff that cheap. And,
no, I mean,
we were slagging off Game Pass, but it clutched it really for this particular item.
Well, yeah, I mean, it saved you some money.
£180 investment though, so let's do the maths on that.
This is the trouble. I mean, you obviously haven't done that because you're quite good at picking stuff up when it's on offer and things, but still, like, it's, I don't know. I mean, you don't want to equate time to pounds. It's difficult to do that because you could spend £40 on 10 hours and have a great time, and then, as you've alluded to here, £30 on 30 hours, and it's fucking eroding your soul. So
I want to look at something like Burning Shore, which was a similar. It might have even been much cheaper than this. I'll try and look it up in a minute. That was like a compelling. Like, I had problems with it because I went back because it was too late. It came out 18 months after the core game, so I was rusty as fuck. Then eventually got my feet under me. The expansion ended. So that was the main issue with that, the timing. But what you've got a new location, new characters, new stories, new like the game in a smaller chunk in a new area basically. Same with Cyberpunk. That's entwined with the main story, but again, it's a new area, new abilities, new shit, blah 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 blah. This, no, just let's cut 50% of what people like about the game out and focus purely on combat and see where you're at in 20 hours, and then we'll see you then. It's just a strange piece of content they're asking money for. And they didn't release it until September, and this came out in February, I think. So I don't know what they were playing at there. So they weren't doing the voiceovers, like I said, because it's missing half of it. Idiots.
Right. So, where? There's literally nothing that you wanted here, other than 20 minutes of anime additional story.
Yeah.
You didn't like the combat.
Well, it's fine, but I've done 100 hours. Well, let's say 50 hours of it. They split the game in half, like I said. I've done 50 hours of it already. It wasn't like they came here and was like, oh, here's some new abilities. Here's a new way of playing. It's like, nope. It's
just more of the same, and you didn't
more
want
of the same. Yeah, and you get to play as Aigis instead of the protagonist. It's like, oh, fine, but
that ultimately makes no difference. Yeah,
no, it doesn't. She has the same powers as him. It's like, well, you've not even made that bit unique. You've not even
reskinned.
You've not even tied us down to say you can only use Aigis' core power, so work around it. Be a bit more imaginative. They're like, no, they got the same power, so you can just flip in and out of personas. It won't feel any different. It's just that the skin looks different. The costume's changed essentially. And the only other thing, I guess, story related, is that because Aigis is a character that you meet in a party member, she responds and has voice and whatnot, whereas the protagonist doesn't speak typically. They might make the odd noise when they're like calling in a persona, but they don't interact with a voiceover. And what that does, which is the real crime when you think about this, is because you're playing a character that's already been defined and they want to do a set story, where you might have previously had some agency to make a choice, usually in Persona games is 1, 2, 3 choices throughout the game, and there's normally one that relates to the ending, typically. You don't get that in this, because Aigis has already got her fucking story mapped out, apparently, so whatever she decides, you have to roll with. And there's actually some really, interesting moments that would have had far more gravitas if I could say, I want to do this instead of that, or that instead of this, or none of that, I want to try this. But no, you just have to go through the motions, because Aigis has decided this is the way to do it. And it just... stupidity. Again, so there's another thing. Choice and consequence, which Persona doesn't live and die by, but it's part of the experience usually. Here, there is no choice. There is no consequence. You're stuck in a time loop, as it mentions in the marketing. So there isn't even a time pressure to get through the dungeons. You could sit in there for 80 hours. You can go back as many times as you want. In the main game, that wastes a chunk of time. So you have to be strategic about when you go in and when you don't go in. This, go in, go out, recharge, go in, go out. So even that element's gone. It makes it a bit easier, I guess. You want to just grind through it. But you lose any strategy, because as soon as you get a little bit low powered, you just go, right, I'll pop out and pop back in. The only penalty for doing that is if you've picked up some of the boost cards during that run, you lose them. But they're not game changers. They're nice to have. So you might as well just refill your health and your fucking stamina so you can use your powers, then grind through just because you got a 1.5 XP multiplier. Pathetic.
Wow.
I don't know what they were doing. You know, it annoyed me so much at one point. I was like, I'm fucking sick of this about halfway through. Yeah. And I knew when the rough end was, because it makes it quite obvious that there's X amount of doors for you to go through, which are basically dungeons. And I was like, about halfway here. And I remember when I was first put on Persona 4 Golden 18 months ago, and I looked in the options, and it was like, you can customize the game to however you want. You could choose to have more XP, more... and there was predefined difficulty settings as well. And at one point, I was looking for the difficulty settings, and there was one called Peaceful at the bottom. I was like, I wonder what that is. And went in there, and it was the standard thing, you get the max amount of XP, you get the max amount of cash, One of the little check boxes, though, I can't remember how it's described, but essentially it means that you can't die in combat. If your player falls, they regenerate with their health and their stamina, so you can just continue playing. So if you don't want the stress of having to grind or level up or make sure you've got the right party composition, you can just kind of just play it and enjoy the story. Yeah. And I before I played Persona 4 Golden, I saw a few people recommending that as actually not a bad way to play if you don't really want to deal with the turn-based combat, or if you want to just kind of just as it mentions peacefully do it. I look and so with about 3 hours to go, I was like, I am sick to death of this. I put it on peaceful and was like, I ain't dealing with these.
Oh, you did do it?
Yeah. I was like, and to that point, I think I died twice. So it's not particularly challenging. It probably is a bit more hard than the base game, but that's because you're busted down to level 25, and I'm used to operating with a party of full strength. But I was like, for this last 15%, I was like, I just want this done now. I don't have to. I don't want to hit a wall where I'm like, oh, I've got to go and grind now because I'm under leveled. So I did it, and it was a bit cheap because you do just die, and you come back to life. But mechanically, I know that the story doesn't end with me dying in combat, so I'm all right to have that. I'll just tick that off. And it just made getting through the last sort of 15% a bit more bearable, where I was like, I know I can now get to the end of this without any major roadblocks. These last 3 hours are just going to be a bit of a feet up. And I was actually able to sort of just enjoy that last bit. But, I don't know if I'd do it again, though, but I would recommend for people, if they are frightened off by the combat or don't want to deal with it, it's actually a really nice difficulty to play on. So those that want like, I really like the story elements of this potentially, or the characters, everyone's waffling about that, but I don't want to deal with the turn-based combat. It's like, well, you will have to deal with it, but you won't have to be punished for not thinking.
Being good at it.
You can get through it. There's one boss, actually, thinking in hindsight, you might not be able to get through simply because they regenerate health every turn. And if you haven't got enough firepower to keep chipping away, you'll never get rid of them. So that's the only one I think would be an issue for people. But that's a recommendation out there. And also, if they do with Metaphor, with what they've done with most Persona games, they release the game, then 3 years later, they release an updated version with new story content and additions and gameplay tweaks. I would consider playing the second one just on peaceful, because I've experienced 99% of this. I'll just chuck it on that and enjoy the new stuff. So I would just shout that out. So they do have nice options in there to fiddle around and make it, how you want. For people that care about trophies, there's no or achievements, there's no penalty to that. So I know a lot of time people just play on whatever difficulty they can get away with to get the trophy. So you can put it on whatever, and you'll get your little bling. And I checked, and I think it was like 1.2% of players had got to the end of this, and I was like, well, no shit.
Wow.
No shit.
That's telling, isn't it? Like, that is telling that people have just gone, nah, I ain't doing that. So it's not, to my earlier point, saying, how do you know you're not just out there on your own with this? Well, the fact that 1.2% have decided they should finish it, and basically 98%, 99% have gone, nah, fuck that.
You can't blame them.
That is the ultimate storyteller, I think, of what people thought about it. I mean, if I was judging the success of my game or my film or whatever it might be, you kind of want people to stay to the end, right?
Yeah.
Because it shows that they're invested in it, that they've enjoyed it, and that they want to see how it plays out. And the fact that most people have binned it before that, or the majority of basically everyone's binned it, is amazing, really.
Well, look, we know Open Critic's not the gospel, but the temperature check, the main game's got an 88, DLC's got a 76, but only 29 critics recommend it. I think that tells a bit of a story that it's unnecessary. 96% of the critics recommended Persona 3 Reload of 136 reviews.
Yeah.
This episode with 26 struggling. And that isn't the gospel, but it's a temperature check. And so, to be honest, as soon as I saw this coming out, I was a bit like, okay, this might not be that good, but it can't be. It's not going to be terrible,
bad.
but I actually think it's a lot worse than that in my eyes. I think it's much. It didn't deserve it. The fact that it's got that little purple fucker sitting there and not like a blue or a green one is quite painful to see. It should be in blue in my eyes. It's got away with it.
It's not very often that you massively disagree with the temperature check either. Like, I think it is a very, very good indicator of where things stand across the board. And
Just trying to see. I still
fundamentally
say plus
disagree.
5 or minus 5, don't
Yeah,
I?
that's usually
So
where you're.
it'd be in the low 70s, which would be on the high end of what I would ever consider this getting. Yeah, 76. I'll be 71-ish, so that might be more deserving, because I think blue hits at like 72, so it would have been in that horrible blue mark. But some of the fucking loos have given it 9s, and you can't cater for those morons. Unfortunately. Who was it?
Proper fanboys, no doubt.
Fucking slops. Nicholas Merciero at the Games Machine. I don't think he's even a proper... Anyway, going off piste again.
Criticising the critics, the ultimate critic.
Oh, he's a top critic.
So,
Nicholas is
well,
the Games Machine. Nicholas Mercerio gave it a 9 out of 10. The production is a moving, containing, and full of synergy. Oh my god, I'm not even reading that. He's Italian, so maybe that's what's done it.
cultural nuance, maybe.
Oh, shit.
So,
I'm sick of it.
where do you want to go with this then? Do you have anything else that you want to kick it for? Because
No.
I feel like you've given it a real good and thorough beat down in the past half hour or so.
It can't be tolerated, this stuff. No, I think that's it. I mean, look, there's no real redeeming areas to it. It's just not a very good,
Soundtrack?
well thought out.
Soundtrack?
Yeah, it's a step down from the main
Think of
game,
it.
though. It's
I've
missing.
100 hours of that already. I don't need.
Yeah, they've got some new songs in there, but they're not as good. So that's a. I mean, again,
Yeah.
you could criticise it for that. I mean, they're not bad. They are still very good, but not as good as the OG. Yeah, and I mean, look, it kind of is what it is. Unnecessary. They could have done without this. No, I don't think anyone was crying for this to be part of this new remake, but they obviously. If you're going to spend time remaking this game in hindsight, and you think we're going to spend resource on doing the expansion or the episode, I would have said bin that idea. Do the separate female character, because that's far more interesting to play the main game again from a different perspective with different social links. I think that's a lot more work, granted.
Yeah.
But that's where I'd have focused personally, because that's far more. Someone saying it to me, I'm like, that's interesting enough for me to go back in a few years and go through again, because the different nuances and changes and relationships, and with the perspective, what's happening as well. That's quite, in a game like this, like the foreshadowing is probably quite deep. You just don't pick up on it until you understand what's going on. So it's one of those games that you can go back to at the core and be like, oh yeah, that is obvious now in hindsight, and having like a new character to play with would have been great, but they didn't do that, and they opted for this DLC episode. Shitters.
I was just going to ask, do you feel like this is a bit of a cash grab or something, like a bit of easy money?
I don't know if it's. I don't know. It seems expensive for what it is, but the fact that it's bundled into Game Pass, and they're not asking for extra. Yeah, I know, but that makes me think they weren't cash grabbing, because you would have said absolutely not, because no other. Very rarely does a game have DLC in it. I just think they realised that it's a lower effort than doing the alternative, which is the female character, and maybe there's a version of this game that appears in a few years, like they've done with other Persona games, where it has that added bit, and I'll be like, okay, maybe I'll revisit it. Whether they bolt this crap on the end of it, we'll find out, I guess. But I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of games that are unnecessary, trying to extend the life of it when you didn't need to at 100 hours, or 60 hours even, or 80 hours. 50 hours is enough.
So it does go back to my original point, really, which is
Needed.
not needed. And I fundamentally think if you've already spent so long in one game, do you really need to add on more?
If you haven't wrapped up the story then you've got a real problem with the base game. And this
is exactly it.
This wasn't the case. So again, it's even more surprising to see that that it came out and they were doing it again. I was like, oh, what are we doing here then? I don't know. I know some people who are in love with these characters will just appreciate having just a bit more. But it is just the smallest morsel, crumb that they give you. It's not... There is some interesting stuff, but it's just not...
There's not enough of it, and it's too long, and it's wrapped up in saying
half the length of it, and I think maybe half the length of it, and your character levels up much quicker, and you feel more powerful quicker. You feel that growth quicker, like a nice 15-hour sort of truncated version of this might have worked better because the stories there's certainly not enough content story-wise to carry that amount of dungeon crawling. So that would have been a better idea, and it would have been again easier for them to implement. They wouldn't have had to build so many dungeons and enemies and algorithms to do the procedural stuff. Everyone's a winner at that in that case. But no, they went to push the boat out, and this is what you get: toilet.
End it there, I say. End it there. You push the boat out, but you end up with toilet. So, are you happy to go into the gallery now?
Ain't going in that gallery. I'll tell you that much. Go straight to that fucking car park and put it in the self-storage. Lock it up with the other shite.
Well, I thought it might just nab itself a bronze or something. You never know. So
I mean, if the story content was so like unmissable, I'd be like, okay, maybe. But actually, there's a school of thought this detracts somewhat from the main story as well. There is a feeling of that somewhat. I don't all the way buy into that, but also I'm like, it was unnecessary. I weren't asking for these answers. I wasn't even asking the question. You've just given us a question and answered it for little or no reason. So that may well have saved it if it was something super compelling or super clever or something like that. But it's just not. It's just like yes, it's good to kind of see in the aftermath of the main game what happened to these characters for a short period of time. But I don't know if you need that. I don't think every game needs to wrap up like that. It can just end how it ended, and you just think, oh, I wonder what they're up to. Otherwise, the game keeps going on for years. Well, here's next year. Here's a year on. Here's two, and you get. And actually, I think the story does carry on into like some fucking fighting game or dancing game bullshit. So when you're doing things like that, I guess maybe this is to be expected. But put it in self-storage and be done with it. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
There you go.
Well, that's that. We can close out of this actually just quickly.
Yeah.
Football Manager 25 has been delayed until March 2025. The game was originally due to be released in November. Sega and Sports Interactive have announced the game will now release March 25 instead of the 26th of November. Quote, after careful consideration, Sports Interactive have made the tough decision to further delay the release of Football Manager 25. Following discussions with Sega, our licensors and partners, we have agreed this is the best course of action for it to be delayed to March 2025. Specific platform release dates will follow once confirmed. Now, it's my understanding the pre-orders only opened a few weeks ago, so Alan's or someone's got in there and said that's not up to snuff, or maybe the pre-order numbers came in so low there was like, well, we can't even push out a shit game here because there's so few of them that it's not going to get the traction that we normally get. Or we can blame Game Pass and say, well, it's on that, so people ain't buying it. Look, I don't remember the last time. I think this might have happened like 25, like Champ Manager 4. That's even further. It's probably 30 years ago. It may well have happened back then, but it's very rare for an annualized sports game to get snarled up like this and for this to happen. What's the theory? Because it's pretty much cost you the FGL as well, or any chance of that.
Any chance? Yeah, it's cost me. I think realistically,
safe pair of hands. Football Manager used to be. Well,
this is the thing. It's mid-ish 80s, pretty much yearly guaranteed. I know that they were doing a lot of work on this one. I think there was rumours of a completely redone and modernised game engine and various other things that they were working on. So it might just be a case of bitten off more than they can chew this year with that.
That's the trouble with doing annual games, isn't it? You only get 9 months to work on the new ones. If you want to change anything big,
you don't have long to do it.
When you could just do a nice little data update. You could even charge a tenner for that.
I mean, they've added some increment. I think what you'll see, and what I'd be surprised if they didn't do, is a data update for
24.
FM25. FM24. I think that will probably come.
50 quid.
No, I mean I'd expect it just to be a.
It should be
They
free.
usually issue one anyway after the
Yeah.
January transfer window, so I kind of hope that they would do that for FM24 so that people can continue to play that
Yeah.
for the new season. I mean, because you're basically it's almost the end of the season by the time they've released it. So
I
I
know,
can't.
yeah,
Part
it's
of me
like
actually thinks
wrapping up,
you'd be better off
skipping.
really missing a year, like if you're realistic about it, and just doing some sort of
Well,
update for 24.
Because now let's say this releases in March. You then got March to November for 26.
Yeah.
Like, does it permanently just fuck the cycle now, or do they? Is 26 going to be in March, or is 26? Are they going to try and just do like tiniest
It'd be
updates
such
ever?
I mean,
It's a shit
got
show.
to. Yeah, it's got to be out. Like I fundamentally think it's got to be out near the beginning of the new season. Like,
November's
because
still
that's-
pretty late in comparison, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
not, that's still like a few months in, a lot of changes and whatnot. But
I'd much prefer
It's
it like
acceptable.
October, like
well, yeah,
September. Right, but realistically, I'm kind of like, well, what are you doing? Like, it should be out. Most people want to play it once the transfer window's wrapped up and
That's
play their game. So, yeah, I am surprised. When Hall first sent that through, I was like, no, that's someone like
I
mocked
thought it's
that up.
photoshopped and made up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went onto the Twitter account and I was like, what is that? Out of all the games,
Spreadsheet simulator's not got it over the
well,
line.
no,
for
it
an
makes you
annual
wonder,
release.
doesn't it? I mean, the fact is, it doesn't deserve an annual release anyway. Like most of these sports games, like it could easily just be every 2 to 3 years that it does something because the actual game hasn't changed much really.
No.
But I just wonder whether they've kind of cocked themselves by having the console version and the PC version.
They've started I say overstretching, but they've expanded.
Because they
having-
binned off touch. They used to have touch, but now they've got mobile, console, and full-blown PC. And I just wonder whether having those 3 versions is, with the new engine and whatever else they're doing, is kind of fucked them, basically. But yeah, obviously disappointing. Pretty much what it does rule out the FGL. Out of all the games that I thought was just going to cock me over, didn't see this one coming. So there you go. Another year where I've been bitten by the Football Manager curse.
Shame they didn't do it 11 days ago or 12 days or whenever it was. And then you
Yeah,
could
I
have
mean, it's
transferred it
typical
out.
that it's just outside of the window, but there you go. It's the way it goes.
I thought it was a joke when Hall posted it as well. And then I
Yeah.
was like, oh, no, they are.
It's a long time to delay it as well. Like, it's
Yeah.
like when you think about their game devs like cycle, like that's basically another 50% extra on their it's pretty mad.
I'm fascinated what they do with 26 now.
There's no
That has to
way-
be some sort of if they're going to release it in November again,
Yeah.
that has to be a discount.
There's
Do you
no
know what I
I
mean?
don't see how they can release a game in March and then release one in November and just go, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be bidding it off, like you said. Just make sure 26 is the absolute title. Do a data update. Say, look, we're going to work on these features over the spring, summer, and then 26 will be in a better position just to launch this new, era of Football Manager, however they want to
They
market
should.
it.
That's how I think they should do it. But it's easy. You then.
There might be contractual things in place with the licenses. They have to do it every year. Like, you don't know what's going on. It's tricky.
Yeah, I think
I would
asking
say.
for a full price release and then a full price release 6 months later is not going to go down well with people.
I wonder how many people just skip it and go to 26.
I personally, I would. If that's the state of play by March, I'd probably be like, well, I can wait till November.
Yeah.
But so what I'd like them to do really is bring forward the date for 26 a couple of months to the sort of early September rather than November.
Yeah.
And then just sack off 25. And then that seems to me the best way to do it. But there you go. Probably won't happen that way.
No, never does. Well, that's the woes of Football Manager. I said that pretty much screws Logan out of the FGL title because I think you both got 9 games out at the moment and paper is ahead. So I think it was a slim chance, but you were kind of relying on that flight sim to bomb or not come out.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, but this just kills it off. So
it needed a huge swing. Like I think it wasn't it like a 26-point swing basically.
Yeah.
So this had to be high 80s, and he's had to really, really flunk, which always seemed unlikely for those two things to happen. But there's always a chance.
That's all you want. That's all you want is a chance. Unfortunately, the chance is gone. Anyway, that's Football Manager. That's Persona 3 fucking DLC done. We'll be back when we're back for some other waffling about games. But a nice self-storage car park jobbing for Persona 3 Reload episode Aigis. The answer. The answer, my arse. Good night. Thanks for your time, and ta-da.
This was a Dimp Digital production.